so many men I realized are suffering in silence. I was.
Yeah.
And I had men with resources that are full of love and full of like care for humanity that could have helped me had I been willing to say, hey, I'm struggling.
Or known how to say it.
Right. Or known how without having that compromise my entire identity.
Hi, welcome to the Flat Bill Investors Podcast. I'm Josh Siglowski.
And I'm Zach Spencer. Welcome, Josh. Let's start out the episode by thanking our channel sponsor.
Drip Swag.
So a lot of times I've bought a lot of swag, a lot of hats and shirts and stuff in my lifetime. And I've never worked with a company that is so creative. I think the first time we even interacted with Colt, he got us these clear acrylic longboards that had our faces in them, which is pretty sweet.
It was, honestly, it's too good to be true. Meaning like, and I'm not saying this just because he's a sponsor, but you know, I've met a lot of swag companies, people, and definitely thinks outside the box has already helped a lot of our viewers, our people on the pods. So thanks again, Drip Swag. We appreciate your partnership.
Yeah, thanks, Drip Swag. Also, switching gears a little bit, we are blessed to be here sitting with a man who, in my opinion, is larger in spirit than he is physically, which is actually very big. He's a very, very tall human, very big, very strong family man. It's a guy that I met probably 6 years ago and has done a lot for me in my emotional state and just in business and in life. We got Joe Speredon today. Welcome, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for coming.
Excited to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're
us
happy.
too.
And as you can tell, even Josh, like, how tall are you, Josh?
6'1".
Yeah.
I've gotten shorter.
I
feel like
you're a little tall.
I was 6'2" in college and high school.
Okay, so now 6'1", but anyway, you're sitting here.
He's 7'9".
I gotta sit up.
Just kidding.
Wemby's got nothing on you. So no, welcome, Joe. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Excited to be here.
I want to start actually with a little story. I told you I had a story. I've got this saved up.
Yeah, and just so the viewers know, like I've met Joe a couple of times, but you know, how I know him is through Zach and like his office and stuff. They've done real estate together and whatnot. So Zach's got probably some awesome stories.
I have a couple of stories, but the funniest story that I always think about though is the day that I met you. Is I was coming back from golfing. I was up at Wolf Creek, and I was in sandals. I was in like flip flops. And one thing you'll know if you meet Joe is he hates shoes, wearing shoes. Hates.
Yeah.
It's like John Maxim Jr.
Yeah, yep. Actually, no, literally. If he could be in sandals or barefoot, he would be.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this though. I was just meeting him because he was interviewing to come and talk to me about joining the brokerage.
Cool.
And so I was like, shoot, I'm already running a little bit late, but I took time in the parking lot to change out of my sandals into shoes so that I could be like a little more professional and like go in not in sandals. And then lo and behold, he was in sandals. And I was like, I should have just stayed in sandals. So a lot of that is maybe a prelude to living authentically.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm in sandals. And that kind of led up. So it's something I think about often. I've never told you that, I don't think.
I love that.
I actually appreciate that a lot. I mean, because we should live authentically.
Yeah.
You know, I think the only setting that is required, like dress shoes, is if like you're doing a white collar job or something. You know, even then, I mean, people dress a little bit differently. But yeah, that's why I've always appreciated John. And you have the same. It sounds like the same thing. That you know he dresses in t-shirts and he's in flip flops in the winter.
He literally wears flip flops all the time.
Absolutely.
That's him too. I was gonna say I sent a meme a long time ago that had a guy who just took Sharpie and drew Sharpie on his feet to make it look like he was wearing sandals.
Oh, really?
But he wasn't really wearing sandals. So I always think about that with Joe, but no, it's good. And then after obviously we started working together, you had an office right in the office, which is great. I got to see you every day and learn a little bit about what you do.
Let's back up. Let's talk about history. I mean, you were interviewed with the brokerage. Like before that, like what were you doing before to get into real estate to what you currently do now?
Question.
I think it's good to kind of backtrack a little bit.
I think it's a good prelude to where I got because when I met Zach, I really went into that pivotal kind of life-changing moment. It was around that same time. So up to that point, I was born and raised in West Valley, oldest of 6 kids, very traditional Utah family, served the mission for the LDS church, came home, got married, had a bunch of kids of my own. And,
a bunch? How many? It's not a bunch.
A bunch. In Utah, you're required to have at least 4, I think, right? But
I have 4 too.
3 boys and a girl, raised them, was approaching that middle-aged mark, spent all that time that they were growing up as the sole provider for my family. My wife was able to stay at home and, be with them, which was important to both of us. And all of these things that you could consider just very stereotypical. Got into real estate about 2 years before I met Zach and had beautiful experiences there. And then wanted to switch brokerages to have something a little closer to home. But at that point in time, part of that was this idea, there was something building inside of me where I had done all the things that I was supposed to do. all the things that as a man you do. You buy the house, you get the job, you have a family and all these things, but there's still something that just felt off. That didn't feel okay.
Not complete. Almost.
And so that got me to the point to where I met Zach. And at that point in time in my life, not because I met you, but just at that point in time, I started to go into, as cliche as it sounds, that midlife crisis.
Sure.
And there was the existential aspect to that. There was a faith aspect to that. And there absolutely was like a middle-aged aspect to that as well. And I started to explore like what that meant for myself, but I was not going in a good direction. I got really, really dark. And honestly, some moments there at the office that were very dark and very scary.
Sure.
That brought me to that point. And at that point in time, I was fortunate enough to be introduced to an organization called Sacred Sons. And they're a beautiful organization. They still exist, but they do retreats. And I had an amazing experience at this event in Southern California.
Was this referred to from a friend, I assume?
Yeah. Okay. I was introduced to them through a friend.
Obviously really a trusted friend.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, at that point in time, it wouldn't have mattered. I was so desperate.
You were searching.
I needed something. Hard. And as I went to this event, I realized that what I was going through silently was much more common than it ever occurred to me.
Sure. Yeah.
And all of the things that I thought there was something inherently wrong with me, honestly, most men across a lot of different cultures and a lot of different demographics were feeling.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because you even say that. You say that in the office you had some dark moments. Like I guess even in the moment being there, and we were there a lot, I didn't realize how bad it was or how the struggle you were going through at the time. I was like, oh, he's kind of going through something.
Well, I don't know your guys' friendship at the time. Obviously you're coworkers, but how many times have you actually found out a friend was like really, really struggling? That was like a really, really good friend.
Yeah.
It happens a lot, because sometimes we're ashamed. I'm not ashamed to say that, 2 years ago, I started therapy with my wife. It's helped our relationship a ton, but honestly, for years and years, I pushed against it. We don't need that. We don't need that. I don't need that, but it's opened up some doors and closed some doors too, in that retrospect. So
that, really is the key point there is so many men I realized are suffering in silence. I was.
Yeah.
And I had men with resources that are full of love and full of like care for humanity that could have helped me had I been willing to say, hey, I'm struggling.
Or known how to say it.
Right. Or known how without having that compromise my entire identity. But I got to this place and I met men that were willing to talk about those things. And I'm sure you guys have been to a million different retreats and events and seminars where you come back and you're pumped about whatever it was that you got for 3 days. But I knew that wasn't going to be sustainable.
Yeah. There's a high when you come home, no matter what it is.
You're vibing high. Yeah,
and then there's a lull.
And
because you're back by yourself.
Because of that awareness, I wanted to start gathering men here locally.
Yeah.
And honestly, I started at our office, at our real estate office. And Zach was gracious enough to lend that space. And I would put it out on my social media. Hey, we're going to gather here and we're going to talk about real life. And the first time
I was going to say, talk about the very first meeting,
right? Very first meeting, nobody shows, just me. And this was, in 2020, we're still kind of fresh. Wasn't sure if maybe it's because people don't want to do things. So I did one on Zoom.
The groups. Yeah.
Nobody showed.
Yeah.
But it started to grow and slowly 2, 3, 4, 5 men started to show up. And that turned into what I established as the Utah Men's Circle.
Well, it ended up being like 60, 70, 100. Like at some points we were like so full.
How are you, this kind of comes to like when you said no one showed, because I've had definitely instances like that in my life and certain things. They didn't show to live. They didn't show to Zoom. How are you inviting them? Was it someone that you could maybe tell they could need some help or how did you kind of gauge on even talking about, do you want to come to this?
Right. That's a great question because I didn't know how to really approach the subject. The reality is I had to find the other men that were at that same point where they're like, hey, this doesn't sound like me. This sounds really uncomfortable, but I am desperate. I'm willing to just get there.
Yeah.
And there were some men that were willing to show up in a more proactive manner. That's been a big focus for me in men's work over the past 5 years is much like our healthcare system. We don't go to the doctor until we're sick.
True.
We don't ask for help until there's a problem that needs help.
Yeah.
And as men, we like to say that thing like, hey, 3 a.m, you call me, I'll answer. But honestly, as we proactively start to address some of this stuff, those 3 a.m. phone calls go away. And you handle these things at like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. And it's much smaller, because you start talking about it before it gets to that point.
Yeah. Yeah. One sentence that I always stuck out from some of our conversations is that in mental health, especially for men, you don't seek help until something breaks. So it's bending. There's a lot of tension, and men just for some reason I don't know if it's cultural or we're hardwired in some way, but we don't seek help until something actually snaps. Yeah. And then you're asking for help versus saying like, hey, there's some tension here, or I need some help, or even just would love, some sort of, camaraderie even and things like that. And that's why I think in Utah, especially, I see some of these groups that have now started, but yeah, seeing the growth of the men's circle is awesome. It's cool to watch.
Yeah.
No, it's way cool. I mean, I sit there and talk about what you guys are just saying about you don't react until something happens, like even then I even posted this, I want to say maybe 4 or 5 months ago, but I coached a kid that from probably about 9 years old to 14 in basketball. And he posted about it. His mom and dad posted about it, but at the age of 17, so last year, he attempted suicide. And I remember responding to his post, like, I'm so glad you're here to tell your story, because he's changed over the last 9 or 10 months. He actually, just last week, I saw that he was called on going and serving a church mission. But just seeing that he's here to tell stories to 17 and 18-year-olds that's might be struggling. Anyways, I saw that, like, man, I didn't even know, but I haven't seen him for, 2-3 years at this point. And you can't like always keep in touch with, kids that you used to coach 4 or 5 years ago. But the same token, I think it was an eye-opening thing for a lot of us that kind of saw that from a distance. Like, even I actually mentioned this at a commercial mastermind I'm part of. It was my very last slide. And I said, hey, just so you know, this just happened. And it was big to me because he was my son's friend, and they go different schools now, but just be talking to your own kids, talk to your kids as, make sure that you're interacting with your kids as friends too. There might be something that might be dark that you're just not seeing, because we see that with our own friends until something breaks. Yeah. It's
crazy. Like I say, it's been eye-opening. And at that point too, when you had come into the brokerage, kind of going back a little bit, I was kind of going through a little bit of some of those question marks of like, okay, like where am I going to land? I think it's maybe like your kids start to get, they're not toddlers anymore and starting to get a little bigger. And you think, okay, what kind of dad am I going to be? And what kind of husband am I now? I just read a thing this morning that said that we have 5 marriages in our life. And he goes, and I hope it's to the same person, but you have like when you're before kids, when your kids are little, and when your kids get bigger, and then your last one is when the kids move out, your empty nesters. Very true. So you have to, as a couple, learn to adjust a little bit and say, okay, we have a different dynamic now. So let's figure out our next stage of marriage.
Where'd you hear marriage.
That? I've never heard that. That's pretty good. A little podcast I was listening to. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, I was like, man, that actually makes like a ton of sense.
It's funny because you're the third person that we've had on. That third person as far as we're talking about mental health. That's all these big, burly. Yeah. We were joking before the podcast about masculine versus feminine. So why don't you talk a little bit about what that means to you now than it did before?
100%. In society, we have some very stereotypical ways that we see masculinity.
You are all of them. You are the ones.
Right. And I love that. I love being really tall. I love having some muscles. I love having a beard and a deep voice and, those things that people would assign as masculine traits. The reality is that doesn't have anything to do with being healthy in your masculinity.
Right.
But our children are raised on this idea that I'm supposed to look a certain way and be a certain way, and that means that I'm masculine.
Yep.
But that really doesn't have anything to do with it. And there are men that would be the antithesis to that are some of the most healthy masculine men that I know. And that's the embodiment of that energy and the mindset that comes behind that. Taking it full circle to the authenticity in being willing and able to wear a pair of flip-flops to a thing. Most men in our culture have been raised to believe they're not okay just as they are. And there's a beautiful book called No More Mr. Nice Guy that talks about that philosophy. And because we've learned that we're not okay just as we are, it's been modeled to us that we're supposed to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And then we show up and we are betraying ourselves in a lot of ways, whether it's something small like that, but we're also seeking like, well, I'm supposed to have big muscles, so I'm going to go do that thing, whether that's really authentic to me or not.
Yeah.
And once you start doing that work and self-discovery, it's okay, who really am I? Who do I really want to be? And an aspect of healthy masculinity is just being clear about that. If you've ever seen the show Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Of course.
I love Ron Swanson.
Sure.
It's because he's one of those iconic men in all of TV.
But he's in one of the scenes, he's at lunch and he's ordering food and the waiter comes up and he says, "What do you want?" says, I'll have a number 8 or something like that. And the waiter says, that's a party platter for 6 people. And Ron Swanson, in one of the most brilliant lines, he says, I know what I'm about, son.
Yeah.
And, it's obviously, it's funny there because he's ordering food for 6 people. But man, that is the goal, to be able to show up with your partner, with your kids, with your employers, your employees, whoever it is, and say, I know what I'm about. That is the essence of masculinity. When you have that and you know what that is, and then you can move forward.
Yeah, the person asks the question
ways.
or questions your choice, and you go, listen, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I know what I want. That's great.
It's funny because myself, I would say in the last 5 years since the pandemic, my thing is being around other guys, and like talking about successes and failures and stuff. And that's really opened up myself to be a better friend, a better spouse, a better dad than I ever have. And it's because I was kind of trying to do it on my own. I wasn't. And now what kind of is I don't want to say my superpower. It's different, but why I need to be around sometimes just other guys and just talking is it helps me in so many different parts of my life when I didn't do that before, And so now that you started this group organization, like what would you say with that group that you've kind of noticed what your powers are, or superpower in that case, that you do with the group that has really made someone feel welcome? And obviously, maybe talk about a little bit on how people can find you that's maybe interested in something like this.
Right. This is a great question. The Utah Men's Circle itself, about 6 months ago, we decided to kind of disband that group. And part of the reason was the co-facilitators that I had, they wanted to go start some of their own spaces. And over the past 3 years, as we've been running that, I've seen so many other really amazing groups come into fruition.
Yeah.
And I like to think that we had a role to play in that because of what we modeled. And I think I don't know if there's necessarily a right way to do masculinity, but I know that there's some wrong ways.
Sure.
And so I feel a responsibility to that. To me, that's one of my superpowers, is to be able to build community.
Nice.
And then to create that space for men to have the real conversations.
Yeah.
And when you can do that in and of itself, there is massive amount of liberation that comes through that. So we'll have men that'll come into the space and say, I don't trust men. I've never trusted men. And they'll be 50, 60 years old. And then 15 minutes in, they'll be close to tears because it feels so liberating to finally say these things to other men. Mm-hmm. And there's healing in that.
Yeah.
There's power in that.
It's awesome. It's different, but the same. And what I mean by that is once I kind of figured that out too, that I needed other guys, my inner circle of friends is much different than it was 5, 10, 15 years ago. And I was doing good, not great financially, 10 years ago, but I've developed these inner circle relationships that I have 3 sisters. And so I didn't have a brother, and it's made it helpful for me to have those brothers, and I'm sure that you have some newer friends in your inner circle that you've developed through meeting with them and like hearing their story and them hearing your story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So been awesome to share kind of like your growth pattern of your trajectory and some ways you've grown. You've found out some of your superpowers. One question I like to ask too is what book are you on right now? What's something you're liking? And then is there a book that you always go back to that is kind of like your go-to once a year or twice a year book that kind of centers?
And it might be the same one, but
yeah.
I understand that there are people that really love the idea of reading 120 or 150 books or however many per year.
Yeah.
For me, I have 7 or 8 that I repeat. And every time I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, I still need to implement that part. And so right now, that book, No More Mr. Nice Guy, I just finished. And there's another book that I'm reading called King, Warrior, Magician, Lover.
Which you have done.
Yeah. Which
what comes to mind is quantity versus quality. Or vice versa.
Yeah, quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
And if I read 70 books, but I don't apply anything from any of them.
Yeah. And I've done that.
It's a humble, it's a brag, But if I've read these books and like they've changed my life, and those 2 books I've purchased legitimately, if you go back and look at my Amazon, 20 plus times.
Wow.
Because I keep giving them away. Because they're
cool.
so impactful and so important. So those are 2. There's another book called Iron John, and then one called The Comfort Crisis. And those books are kind of my standard works of masculine health.
Joe's canon. I like it.
So I repeat those quite often. And that's where I'm at right now, is that king, warrior, magician look.
That's good.
And might I add before we wrap up here is this is not, now tell us what this is. Cause I'm sure the viewers are like, okay, he brought some guns in here today.
Right. Yeah.
He's not packing. I mean, he's got
These guns, right?
Yeah,
But
those guns.
No, this was a gift from that initial organization that I did so much with, Sacred Sons. And this one has my cell phone and this one has my wallet and keys. And as my kids have learned, sometimes there's candy in this one too. So
Nice.
but no, it was a gift from brothers that I went through a lot of really beautiful experiences with them. And I like the way they look, and they're also really convenient.
I have some mementos as well that, that means a lot. I even have a tattoo that I have of being the one, I did that with my son. So I get the memento and having that on each and every day.
Yeah, that's sweet. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, it's been great
appreciate
to
it,
connect
Joe.
a little bit and hear a little bit about your story. And people want to find you. Let's say they want to talk about masculinity or talk about some of the groups you're in. Where can they get you?
So yeah, I mean, the two best places is just Joe Speredon on Instagram, or the men's group that I'm running now is called the Algaes Guard. Horrible for branding, but irrelevant to masculinity. So
there you go.
Yeah, those two
Algaes.
Instagram accounts.
We'll throw a link on that.
Throw them in the show notes, and
Yeah, there you go. That's great. Well, thanks so much, brother, and love you, and thanks for having you on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Love you too, man.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Well, until next time, invest in your future.
Invest in yourself.
This is the Flat Bill Investors Podcast signing off.